Good morning, friends. You know what? My heart is kind of hurting today. It's not that anything out of the ordinary happened. It's not that people are sick and dying, but that is happening, well, like in all of the world. But it's that I have this great burden for those of you who are caught in the overwhelming stress of life. Now, stress really seems like a fact of life, right? I mean, the truth is, stress really takes a huge toll on our bodies. For many of us, we have this tendency to overeat, mostly junk food, but sometimes any kind of food when we are stressed, because we are trying to eat our stress away. But that's only going to lead us down this path of continual weight gain. But stress is a big deal these days. Now, we might not realize it, but totally changing the way we do things is just stressful. I mean, we have a pattern. We know what our days look like. Now, all of a sudden, everything has changed. And staying home becomes stressful, and not being with extended family and friends becomes stressful. Not going on vacation becomes stressful. Just thinking about going to the grocery store or even trying to go to church is stressful. We've all been through a ton of stuff in 2020. And friends, it shows. It does. And now it seems that it's carrying over into 2021. But as we venture forward into the world, slowly, poking our heads up out of the holes we've lived in for over a year, we're realizing some things about 2020 that we might not have factored in. We gained weight. Yeah, it happens. And of course, we knew it when it was happening, right? It wasn't a surprise to us. But we figured we'd just go on another diet. We'd lose it when everything got back to normal. And some even joked about the 20 to 30 pounds they gained. Some people do have the ability to simply lose the weight by going on a diet or ramping up exercise. But I'm going to tell you that those of us who are getting older, and the older we get, we're realizing that diets aren't working. And they never really did. If we'll be honest with ourselves, they didn't work to change our habits for the rest of our life. If they had worked, we wouldn't be continually running back to them to solve our issues. We would have already fixed our issue, right? But the other thing is one that I know all too well. If you already weigh, let's say, I'm just going to choose a number, 250 pounds or more, 30 additional pounds can be dangerous, as it will lead to diseases of all types. One of the biggest dangers may be the reality that what we are eating is basically stress. That bag of chips, it's stress. That box of cookies, stress. That tub of ice cream, that represents stress. All those brownies you baked, stress. And all those yummy new desserts you tried out on your family when you just wanted something different to eat, mark it S-T-R-E-S-S, stress. What you are eating or overeating is stress, plain and simple. And it will add more pounds than just the food alone. Eating stress is really no fun at all. So according to Healthline, here's what happens when we are stressed. So our central nervous system, which is in our brains, is in charge of our fight or flight response. This kicks in when we feel stressed. Our brain tells us that our adrenal glands need to release stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And these hormones make our heartbeat go up and send blood rushing to areas of our body like our muscles and our heart that might need it, like in case of, let's say a saber-toothed tiger is chasing you and you need to get away fast. It would be kind of stressful. But there are many things that cause that kind of fight or flight syndrome when we get stressed or overwhelmed. So when whatever is causing the stress goes away, then our brains should tell our body systems to go back to functioning normally. However, if our brain doesn't do that, or if our body systems don't return to normal, or if the stressor doesn't go away, the stress response, this heightened sense of urgency, will continue. Can you say hashtag 2020, which morphed into hashtag 2021? But this is known as chronic stress, and I think a lot of us are suffering from that. And we may not even be aware of it. We're just trying to eat it away. These stress hormones cause our blood vessels to constrict and divert more oxygen to our muscles so that we have more strength to take action if needed, running away from that tiger or whatever it is. But this also raises our blood pressure. And as a result, frequent or chronic stress will make our hearts work too hard for too long. And when our blood pressure rises, so does our risk for having things like a stroke or a heart attack. Chronic stress is a huge factor in behaviors such as alcohol or drug abuse, and the one I'm talking about today, and that is overeating. When we are in the midst of stress and turn to food, we pretty much do it mindlessly. And most of the time, we are not even aware of what we are eating or how much we are eating. We think we're just eating because it's making us feel better, or we think we're hungry, but we're really not. If we really dive down and see what's going on, we'll see that we're not hungry, really. Instead, we're like maybe sitting in front of the TV watching reruns of old movies, and before we know it, we've eaten a whole bag of chips, but we haven't tasted a single one. The culprit here isn't the food. The culprit is our inability to deal with the emotions we are feeling, which is causing us to go to the food. Because no one really ever prepared us of how to deal with being stuck at home. I mean, no one prepared us for being scared that we won't have enough money to pay our bills, especially our mortgage. And certainly no one ever prepared us to homeschool our children all the time while trying to work so that we can pay a few bills. When we don't know what to do, many of us look for a way to ease our emotional discontent and pain. Some of us go to alcohol and drugs. I mentioned that before. Some go to pornography or gambling. Some of us go to what we think is the lesser addiction, and that is food. The problem with this is using food to try to solve our problems only gives us more problems to deal with. And soon the doctor's warning us that our blood pressure is too high and we're on the verge of diabetes. When we don't pay attention to all of these things, everything goes out of whack. And we begin to have, let's say, mobility issues and fatigue and brain fog. We know we have a problem with overeating, but we keep telling ourselves that as soon as everything gets back to normal, we will be able to lose the weight. The problem is we have already begun to rely on our old friend, processed sugar, and foods with high carbohydrate content. We think they just make us feel better for a moment. And then we need more of the same kind of food to get that same kind of feeling. It's a cycle really that never stops. And as a matter of fact, it can easily last through, let's say, an entire movie marathon with multiple bags of chips or cookies or brownies or whatever. And we think that helped us forget all of our problems. But if you just wait a minute, you'll find the problem is still there. And therefore, so is the stress. It hasn't gone anywhere. You have just temporarily drowned it under a mountain of food that you didn't need to consume. Now, I'm not saying all of this to shame you. I'm sharing this to challenge you and give you a wake-up call. Because eating extra food we don't need will not do away with our stress. It will not solve our problems. These days, everyone is looking for answers, but almost no one wants the real answer. And you know me, I'm going to tell you the truth, okay? Back when I wrote my first book, which was called Sweet Grace, How I Lost 250 Pounds and Stopped Trying to Earn God's Favor, I got an email that said, I'm reading your book and I'm confused. You say you've been on low-carb diets and gained weight back again. Now you're on a low-carb diet and losing the weight and keeping it off. What changed? It's really a good question. But in my response to her, I said, obviously, it's not what we eat, right? Right there, she identified the whole issue. It's not what I was eating. Part of it was I was eating too much. But it was why I was eating. I told her that she needed to reread Sweet Grace and look for the hidden keys, and I told her they weren't so hidden. Because, I've written 6 books now. My latest one, Sweet Surrender, Breaking Strongholds, is on Amazon, so go over there and check it out. But I've done so many training videos, it's hard to keep track of them all. What everyone wants to know is what my diet is. The diet that helped me lose 250 pounds and keep it off. They want to know what my magic eating plan is that helped me lose the weight. Because they think if they eat the same thing, they will lose weight too. If you read any of my books or listen to any of my podcasts, friends, for very long, you'll get my eating plan. And it's not a diet. It's a forever lifestyle change plan. God gave it to me in 1977. I share it often. I didn't start implementing it until 2009 because, I was stubborn and rebellious and basically just didn't want to do it. But the plan is very simple and also very hard because obviously I didn't want to do it. It was simple and I knew it was simple, but the hard part was that I just didn't want to do what he told me to do. God told me to stop eating sugar and bread and start eating meats, fruits, and vegetables. That's my plan. It's not that regimented or intense. It's simple, it's easy to remember, and God knew that I needed that kind of plan to be anywhere near successful on my journey. To answer the woman's question who emailed me, the big change wasn't my diet. It was one word: surrender. I finally learned how to totally surrender to God the foods that were causing me to gain weight and the amount of the food that was causing me to gain weight. In my past life, which kind of feels like I've had two lives, right? When I weighed 430 pounds, I could go on a diet and lose 100 pounds pretty easily. Now, that was when I was much younger. The problem was it was just a diet to me. It was a short-term fix. I never intended to eat that way for the rest of my life. I only did it to lose some kind of goal weight, and that was usually 100 pounds. And then I would reward myself by going out back to eating like I'd always eaten before. I didn't learn anything from the diet because I never intended to curtail what I ate for the rest of my life. I just didn't. And once God finally got through to me that I was a sugar and a carbohydrate addict, I finally understood what I had to do. I surrendered those things to God and asked Him to help me do what I thought I could never do: go without sugar and flour for the rest of my life. I've done it many times for short periods of time, but this was for the rest of my life, the thing that I had always pushed against. The reason this is vitally important to talk about when we're discussing stress eating is if we have a plan in place that we know God has given us, we will have good boundaries. We will know when we're straying outside those boundaries. It won't be a question. Then when we are stressed, we will be better able to keep our boundaries because we know what those boundaries are and what works for us. Most of us point to what we eat as the cause of the angst we feel over our weight gain and our stress. It's the brownies' fault. They're just evil personified, right? And while what and how much we eat is our basic problem, that still doesn't get at the core of why we eat. Without going to that deep place, we will always eat more than we should and continue to gain weight, especially during times of stress or high-level emotions or various things that happen to us just out of the blue that we aren't expecting. Changing how we think and how we deal with our emotions is something most of us, we just want to ignore at all costs. After all, that's why we're overeating in the first place, right? We want to ignore those things. It's crucial, though, to understand that how to deal with our emotions is the key to stopping that endless cycle of yo-yo dieting, of weight gain and weight loss and weight gain and weight loss. And in order to do that, we have to get to the root of why we eat when we are not physically hungry. And part of it is actually physical. Because if I eat foods which are addictive to me, foods that I can't say no to, I will overeat them. Why? Because the reason I eat those foods is I am stressed or have emotions I don't want to deal with. So, we are very complex human beings. We know we need to change. We have good intentions, and then something just goes haywire when we try to implement those changes. There are many layers to this, friends, but it starts with acknowledging that we have a problem with food that goes deeper than just sticking to an eating plan or diet. Stress from working long hours, stress from bills, stress from relationships, stress from not eating right, stress from not working out, stress from not being spiritual enough. stress from giving into temptation, stress from not doing our daily devotion, stress, stress, stress. It's the major culprit. We eat to stave off stress, and then we get more stressed because it shows what we've eaten on the scale, right? Now, here's what God has to say about all of that. Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you even burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I love that terminology. The unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And I love that phrase as well. Learn to live freely and lightly. That's Matthew 11:28-30 in the Message. Now, wouldn't it be awesome to live freely and lightly? These verses tell us it is possible to stop the spinning for a minute and let God lead. I'm not saying to do forced Bible study, though studying the Bible is great. I'm saying to allow God to minister to you as only He can. Running to food when we are stressed does not hold a candle to running to the only one who can really comfort us, the precious Holy Spirit, the Comforter Himself. Now, many of us probably have a disconnect with the Holy Spirit. We don't really know what to think about this somewhat nebulous part of the Trinity as we see Him, but the Holy Spirit, above every other thing attributed to Him, is our Comforter and our power source. He is the power that raised Christ from the dead, as it tells us in Romans 8:11. And in the Living Bible, it says it this way: and if the Spirit of God who raised up Jesus from the dead lives in you, He will make your dying bodies live again after you die by means of this same Holy Spirit living within you. See, Jesus didn't raise Himself from the dead because He was fully human while here on earth. He was weak in that He didn't have the strength to do that. He was humanly weak. He needed the Holy Spirit just like we do. Though these days, the talk is that we women are supposed to be strong, right? But I want to readily admit that I am weak without God. And it's okay that I am, because God delights in my weakness. Losing 250 pounds has been the easiest hard thing I've ever done, because I surrendered my weakness to Him and I let Him be my strength. So 2 Corinthians 12:9, one of my favorite scriptures, God tells us, my grace is enough. It's all you need. My strength comes into its own in your weakness. His grace, it's all the power I need to take the next step out of overwhelming difficulty, stress, emotional pain, and heaviness into living freely and lightly. Which would you rather have? We really don't have to worry. His yoke is easy because we are joined in this battle with Him. We don't have to pull our strength alone. He's pulling with us. And as long as we're going in His direction, the yoke is easy to bear and the burden is light. When is the last time you took even 5 minutes to soak in his presence. I mean, we're all busy, right? Too busy to take time to just be quiet and be in his presence, focusing only on him, and ask him, Holy Spirit, what do you want me to know today? I invite you to lead me every step of the way. I invite you fully into each moment. Speak to me and just let him tell you what he wants to tell you, not just, your big list. Just have communion with him. So are you weak today? That's awesome, because when you let Christ take over, the weaker you get, the stronger you're going to become. 2 Corinthians 12:10 tells us that. It tells us to stop trying to do this in our own strength. He longs to help us, not so we'll get skinny. Most people who come into my group, that's one of their things, is they just want to look better, right? And we all want that. We want to look better. But God really wants us to live better, to live closer to him. He wants to help us so that we will be healthy, so that we will learn how to rely on him for the next step on our journey. He'll even lead us to, and what to eat and what to do to help relieve the stress that we've been trying to eat away. And I'm even going to say this, although it's kind of unpopular, but I don't really care, because I just tell it like it is. Stop dieting. Stop dieting. Dieting is really a man-made plan. It calls upon our willpower, and willpower will only last so long. We have to have God's power to get what we have to be doing and what he wants us to do. We have to have his power to get to that place. In Overcomers Academy, I teach the members how to work with God to understand their own forever lifestyle change plan. Stop trying to bear these burdens alone. God is really ready to help you shoulder them if you just take your hands off and let him show you. Now, this particular podcast episode, is the first in a series of 4 episodes that I'm putting into a training called Eating Stress. And it will include the video of each of these episodes along with the transcript download. Now, I'm offering it to you free. And all you have to do is go to teresashieldsparker.com/stress and sign up. You'll get an email, and it'll tell you how to connect to the course and a way to go back there each week. So the podcast episodes will still be available like always, right? However you're listening to the podcast, you can still do that. But this is just a little something extra I'm doing because I've been asked if I could share transcripts. And I will add some action steps to the transcript each week, and those will not be on the podcast. Those will just be for y'all who want to go and get the trainings. They won't even be on the video as well. So we'll send you emails to remind you each week when we post a new lesson. That is if you sign up to join the training. This is the first time I've done something like this, so I'm game if you are, right? It will allow me to connect better with some of my favorite people, and that's you, my podcast audience. So the link again is teresashieldsparker.com/stress. Now, one last word. If you've been eating stress and avoiding emotions for years, I totally understand. I lived that way for over 50 years. I know how you feel, but I also know that we can walk out of that. So we'll be talking more about dealing with emotions and handling stress next week and in the upcoming episodes. Until then, sweet grace for your journey.